It's the biggest defence deal in Australia's history. The $368 billion AUKUS nuclear submarine program.
I have never seen a major defence program executed on time. We have so many challenges with this.
This will be probably the most complex engineering feat in the world.
So you don't think we're going to get these Virginia-class submarines?
I think it'll be a miracle, quite frankly.
I am very confident we have the wherewithal to build at the rate necessary and to fulfill our obligations with Australia.
But there are warnings that Australia has signed up to a dud deal, with our AUKUS allies holding all the cards.
They can walk away from it. No penalties, no refunds.
And now the Trump administration has opened the possibility of sinking the entire deal, ordering a review into the AUKUS agreement with Australia. On Four Corners, we travelled to the United Kingdom and the United States to investigate whether the AUKUS submarine deal will be delivered, or whether it could rise or fall on the whims of a US president who hasn't ruled out military force to get Greenland, who calls Canada the 51st US state, who's embraced Russia and shunned Europe, and who slapped tariffs on long-time allies, including Australia. So will AUKUS survive Donald Trump's upending of the global geopolitical order?
Australia has reason to be concerned whether or not the strong partnership between the US and Australia will remain.
I can see why people are asking questions. Hey, what the heck is going on here?
And in this more uncertain, Trump-dominated world, will Australia be left stranded and out of pocket?
What is the worst case scenario for Australia with AUKUS?
No submarines at all. It's an expensive illusion.
I'm in Connecticut in the northeast of the United States, and I'm heading to a place called Groton. Now, Groton is synonymous with submarine building in the United States. In fact, at one point during World War II, they were producing one submarine every 2 weeks in Groton. Now, 80 years on from that, Groton is still crucial, not just to AUKUS, but also to Australia acquiring its first ever nuclear-powered attack submarine. It may be the self-proclaimed submarine capital of the world, but this coastal community has a problem. It's struggling to find the thousands of skilled workers it needs, a dilemma that could have serious implications for Australia. At this technical school in Groton, students like 18-year-old Coleman Sharp are learning the skills needed to build some of the world's most complex machines.
Wanted to weld on submarines. My dad was in the Navy for 20 years. He was a submariner. It's hard not to feel a little sense of patriotism with it, because, I mean, it's nuclear defense. It's keeping the country safe, keeping the world safe.
Watching the training today is Democratic Congressman Joe Courtney, who is co-chair of Congress's Friends of Australia caucus and whose district takes in the Groton submarine yard. It's one of only 2 yards in America that builds the Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack submarine. With the United States desperate to ramp up production, the race is on to enlist and train more workers in this highly specialised industry.
A couple of folks that we've heard from today, when they walked in the door here, they had never touched a welding torch in their life. One was a butcher, another one was a UPS driver that was doing deliveries. And 6 weeks into the program now, they're already getting qualified in terms of, really smart ways to, get their skill up to a level that is safe for them to go into a shipyard.
Under the first phase, or Pillar 1 of the AUKUS agreement between Australia, the US and the UK, Canberra will acquire at least 3 American Virginia-class submarines, the first due to arrive in 2032, with others to follow. They will replace our ageing diesel-powered Collins-class subs and will give Australia a nuclear-powered attack weapon that can sail further and faster, stay underwater much longer, and pack more strike power and stealth.
Pretty much anything that is on the surface of the ocean these days or that flies in the air is detectable and targetable. The last environment that is almost impenetrable still to detection technology is the undersea environment, and that's where the Virginia-class submarine comes into its own.
They are an incredible submarine. How they can operate in a very stealthy mode, their range, their lethality. There's nothing like them on the face of the earth. So they are feared by everybody around.
Republican Congressman Rob Whitman's district is next door to the other Virginia-class submarine building yard in Newport, Virginia. While proud of America's submarine capability, the congressman acknowledges that the gap is closing in the undersea arms race, and the US needs to lift its game.
Virginia-class is key. Unfortunately, right now, the United States is only building them at a rate of 1.2 per year. We need to be building them at a rate of 2.3 per year in order to meet our requirement of the number of submarines we have, but also to meet our obligation to be able to sell the first several submarines to Australia to kick off Australia's effort in the nuclear submarine realm.
You mentioned that build rate of 1.2
Yes.
Virginias per year. Why has it stalled at that rate?
It's really about workforce. The industry has struggled post-COVID to put the workforce back together.
For the United States, the AUKUS alliance is about countering what it sees as the biggest single threat to its global dominance. A growing Indo-Pacific superpower that is also building up its nuclear submarine capability at a faster rate than the Americans.
China has engaged in the largest peacetime buildup of its military, really in human history. We've never seen anything quite like this.
For 4 years, Jake Sullivan was the United States National Security Advisor under then-President Joe Biden, privy to Washington's most classified secrets and its war plans. He was also America's security czar when the AUKUS agreement was forged in 2021.
AUKUS is important strategically. It sends a clear message that the US, Australia, and the United Kingdom are going to pull together to send a common message of deterrence to the region. Second, it's important operationally. Having another ally in the water with us, with this capability, expands our ability to deal with any contingency, and especially to ensure that that message of deterrence is translated into actual deterrence to try to avert and prevent conflict going forward.
Earlier this year, China sent a clear message to Australia and to Washington when it sent a naval flotilla to conduct live fire exercises off our coast, something it is legally entitled to do. The flotilla then circumnavigated the country on its way home.
I think that they're expressing themselves as a blue water power. They're making it quite clear that they have the capability and the endurance to operate across the Indo-Pacific, and I expect we'll see more of it.
I think it should be a wake-up call that so to speak, the playing field has expanded both geographically and in terms of the types of undertakings and activities the Chinese military will pursue in the years ahead.
China wants everybody to know that they are no longer a regional power, that they are a world power, and that they can sustain their fleet away from the South China Sea.
AUKUS really is designed to be prepared to counter Chinese aggression.
Christopher Miller was the acting US Defense Secretary in the dying days of the first Trump administration.
Probably putting you on the spot here, but...
Go ahead, let's go. Come on, give me the hard ones, Mark. Let's go.
Christopher Miller believes the recent Chinese circumnavigation of Australia would not have happened if Canberra had been armed with the world's most sophisticated naval weapon, the Virginia-class nuclear-powered submarine.
I think it would be a huge deterrent. If you imagine you're the admiral that's running the Chinese Communist Party flotilla around Australia, and all of a sudden you now have to think about, wait a second, there's something I can't find, I can't see, I can't hear that could be in my midst. That creates an entirely different dilemma for him. And that's really what we're talking about, is creating strategic dilemmas for the Chinese Communist Party.
But to do that, the United States has to solve a seemingly intractable dilemma of its own. It's simply not building enough Virginia-class submarines for its own fleet, let alone enough to supply Australia.
You think AUKUS, it needs to speed up, there needs to be a bit more action?
That's where I am on the thing. Again, like wonderful initiative, but I feel like we're moving too slow. And I think probably most of that's on the United States side, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, talking of going slow, do you think the production rate is good enough?
No, the problem is we don't have the workforce, the welders, the skilled machinists that are required.
How concerned are you about that production rate and the fact that it doesn't seem to be accelerating?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about it. I mean, it's a huge challenge that we have. It's a big part of the reason why we're trying to develop more partners in the world so that we can up our industrial capacity by growing it beyond U.S. borders. But we also have to improve it domestically. We need to hire the workforce.
Adam Smith is the ranking Democratic member on the US House of Representatives Armed Services Committee, which oversees the Department of Defense and America's nuclear submarine program. The US Navy has a stated goal of establishing a submarine attack fleet of 66. Right now, it's about 17 boats short of that target.
What impact is that going to have potentially on the AUKUS deal and delivering those Virginias on time?
It puts pressure on it. And no question about it. But I'm hoping that the AUKUS deal will also put pressure the other way. It'll put pressure to solve that problem.
This is a problem the United States needs to overcome in a matter of a few years. Because under the AUKUS agreement, Washington is expected to deliver the first Virginia-class submarine to Australia in the early 2030s.
The reality is that they're not going to make it.
Former Rear Admiral Peter Briggs spent 40 years in the Australian Navy, rising to command this country's submarine squadron.
The US shipyards are not meeting their targets, and so instead of producing 2 standard Virginias a year. They've produced 1.1, 1.2 over the last 5 years. And so the shipyards are now full of partly built submarines. They're now requiring those same shipyards to produce one Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine, which is 2.5 times the size of a standard Virginia.
So, put simply, the Americans will not have enough of their own attack-class submarines to spare any for Australia.
Quite correct. It's high, very, very high risk.
They also have to retire the older Los Angeles-class. And so I don't think they'll be able to replace the boats retiring, build up to the numbers that they want, as well as offering us the submarines that they would like to offer us.
So you don't think we will get these Virginia-class submarines?
I think it'll be a miracle, quite frankly.
You're talking about the nation that put the man on the moon, right? I think you underestimate them at your peril.
If the American Virginias don't arrive on time, or at all, Australia could be left with what's called a capability gap, or no submarines at all. Because our decades-old Collins-class submarines are struggling to stay afloat. They were due to be retired next year, but are now being given life extensions to ensure Australia has some form of submarine capability.
So we'll get that Virginia-class submarine, that first submarine, on time, 2032?
That is the United States Navy's job, to set the conditions to enable that to succeed.
The Australians have another reason to be hopeful the Americans will deliver. Because we've already handed over the first down payment on the Virginia-class subs deal. The Defence Minister Richard Marles delivering $800 million to the Trump administration earlier this year.
And we really understand the importance of building our capability, but in paying our way. I mean, that is a very important principle that we bring to bear.
It's the first of 6 of these payments designed to boost the capability of the struggling US submarine industry and get subs rolling off the production line.
So I just want to thank you.
So put it bluntly,
yes,
Australia will get those Virginia-class submarines.
With every fibre of our being, yes.
And
yes.
on time.
And on time, yes. Yeah, that's what we're pressing the gas pedal to get done now.
But under the AUKUS deal, the cards are stacked heavily in Washington's favour. And Australia could lose everything it has bet on these nuclear subs.
This is a good deal for the Americans. If they see that the AUKUS program is impacting on their capability, they can walk away from it. No penalties, no refunds. That's it.
Under the United States' own AUKUS legislation, the President has to declare to Congress that any transfer of Virginia-class submarines will not degrade America's undersea capabilities. Otherwise, the deal is off.
So we lose our money and we don't get any submarines?
Correct. That's the deal we've signed up to.
We're in this program because of a political decision made by 3 nations. So I'm not going to speculate on what future administrations may or may not choose to do. I'll leave the politics to the politicians. At this moment, we have very, very clear direction from the Australian government to execute this program, to make it work, make it succeed.
Does the US have quite a few little get-out-of-jail-free cards here?
If the US woke up one day and decided it wasn't going to follow through on AUKUS, could it do that? In reality, yes, of course. But then what that's missing is the basic idea of trust and the logic of the deal. And if you have trust between allies and you have logic of the AUKUS deal that says this is good for us, then you're going to stay in it.
Do you fear that a president in the future could veto the transfer of the Virginia-class subs because of that degradation clause in the legislation?
Mark, it's always a possibility. I honestly am more concerned about the Australian government because the politics of this relationship still are fraught. And we're seeing, what I'm seeing is, and quite rightly so, is some concern that it is a huge commitment of resources by the Australian people.
And Four Corners can reveal that the Trump administration has been asking questions, specifically about this country's ability to operate nuclear-powered submarines.
They have questions. It's a new administration. We are working through the detail of those questions and providing them the evidence, fact-based driven evidence to support the optimal pathway.
What sort of questions are they asking you?
Oh, they're asking us questions. Are we ready? Are we ready on the infrastructure? For instance, a good question would be, are you ready to support nuclear-powered submarines? And we say, yes, we are. We're on track.
Nuclear submarines are coming to Australia regardless of whether the Americans can supply them or not. Because under an agreement with Washington, the US will get to operate their nuclear subs out of HMAS Sterling off Perth from as early as 2027.
So the government is investing $8 billion into HMAS Sterling. And then from the early 2030s, we will be operating from that base with our own Virginias.
It's incredibly important to be able to have an operating base away from home where you can sustain the submarine, where you can go there and do some interim repair work, where you can replenish the submarine. Those things are incredibly important.
You're saying that AUKUS potentially is win-win-win for the Americans. They could get to keep their submarines, they get to keep our money, and they get somewhere to base their submarines at HMAS Sterling.
What's not to like about it?
The Australian government and the Defence Force reject any suggestion Canberra is ceding any sovereignty to Washington.
Terminology is important here. It won't be an American base.
This is an Australian base. HMAS Sterling, emphatically an Australian base. America absolutely recognises this. We'll have US submarines operating out of there, but rotating.
A US Congressional Research Service report released this year floated the prospect that if the Virginia-class aren't handed over, an alternative scenario is the US sailing its own submarines out of HMAS Sterling, essentially relegating Australia to nothing more than a forward operating garrison.
We won't have any sovereign submarine capability at all. We might have submariners at sea, but they'll be in other navies' boats.
American boats.
American boats.
Their proposition is we basically give away our submarine capability. You're totally dependent on that other country as to what they do with the submarine, and your people get taken along with it. That could be quite uncomfortable in some scenarios.
For example, if the Americans got tangled up with China over Taiwan.
Correct.
Former United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan rejects the notion that AUKUS is some clever plan designed to lock Australia into future American adventures or conflicts.
Going at this on the notion that somehow it's a bit of a trick by the United States, which is kind of what the argument about sovereignty is. The Americans are luring us into something and then they'll spring the trap if there's a contingency, I think misses the point of why we want to see this happen. It's about the strategic level of a clear message of deterrence. It's about the operational level, and then it's about the technological level and the work we can do together to advance the ball. We're straight up about all that.
The man chosen by President Trump as his Undersecretary of Defence for Policy has been staunch in his opposition to transferring any Virginia-class submarines to Australia.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the Armed Services Committee.
Last year, before his elevation to the Pentagon, Elbridge Colby told the ABC that such a move would weaken American strike power.
It would be crazy for the United States to give away its single most important asset for a conflict with China over Taiwan. We have fewer attack submarines than we've had in many years. It's not getting better anytime soon.
Well, listen, we're not giving them away. I mean, we are putting them in the hands of our friends in Australia.
Rob Whitman argues that giving Australia nuclear submarines locks Canberra in even closer to US strategic interests.
I mean, to me, that's a lever. That's where we can leverage the ability for Australia to do even more in partnership. That's a force multiplier for the United States and our friends in that region of the world. So I would argue that, we're not giving them away.
But many worry that the biggest threat to the AUKUS submarine deal could be the unpredictability of the man now in the White House. Donald Trump's administration is demanding Australia boost its defence spending. Now, it's blindsided its AUKUS allies, announcing a review into the deal and if it aligns with Trump's America First agenda, questioning whether the US can build enough subs for itself, let alone Australia. And the person leading the review, the Under-Secretary of Defence and AUKUS skeptic, Elbridge Colby. Despite the review into AUKUS, Trump's close Republican allies say the deal fits perfectly with the president's strategic priorities.
If you look at it, he wants to do everything we can to deter China. He wants a greater strategic capability in the region. He wants us to make sure that we have more operational opportunities there with our friends in the region. Every single one of these things aligns exactly with what AUKUS is going to do.
While we are in Washington, there is a protest against President Donald Trump and his administration.
What's happening in this country?
We are losing our democracy.
What do you think Donald Trump's done to America's international reputation?
I would say if you make Canada mad, that's pretty tough.
What do you think Donald Trump's done to the United States' international reputation?
He has trampled on it.
Many of Washington's long-term friends around the world are also troubled by the current US president's erratic approach to foreign policy. Australia has been one of Washington's closest and most enduring allies for decades, fighting alongside the US in intractable wars from Vietnam to Afghanistan and Iraq. But in the era of Donald Trump, shared battles, spilled blood and enduring loyalty doesn't mean any favourable treatment.
Well, therein lies the fly in the ointment. The Trump administration is unpredictable in this regard and worrisome in many respects. Their contempt for allies and partners has the potential not just to undermine the AUKUS agreement, but to undermine the very national security of the United States of America. I cannot possibly be critical enough of the way the Trump administration has treated our partners and allies since they were elected. It's bullying, it's idiotic.
I think this is a great source of alarm. The direction of travel right now is quite disturbing.
The European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. We're flying over a thing called the Gulf of America. Look, what I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. I call him Governor Trudeau.
Look, I don't think this is just a joke either. I mean, I'm not worried about an invasion of Canada tomorrow, but there's something kind of deeply serious about this idea of territorial acquisition. I'm not sure that he's looking for territory down under, so, not to make light of it, but, you
think we're safe?
You might not have to worry in that regard, but I can see why people are asking questions. Hey, what the heck is going on here? This isn't right.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. The Panama Canal was given foolishly years ago. We're going to take it back, or something very powerful is going to happen.
Threatening Denmark, that we're going to invade Greenland, threatening Panama, threatening Canada, slapping tariffs on every single country in the world, save, I guess, Russia. It's really stupid.
What does that mean for Australia? Are we guaranteed to remain a long-standing trusted ally of the United States under Donald Trump?
Australia has reason to be concerned whether or not the strong partnership between the U.S. and Australia will remain.
The first submarines Australia will get will be the American Virginias in the 2030s. Then, in partnership with Australia, the United Kingdom will design and build a brand new AUKUS submarine due in the 2040s. There is also dismay in the UK about Trump trashing old alliances and tearing up the global rulebook.
Well, we have had the privilege of having 80 years or so of an international rules-based order that was set up after the Second World War. Trump has broken that.
You know, dear old Trump coming in has made us all, stood everyone on their heads, really. Things that we absolutely took as a certainty are no longer a certainty. What he's been saying about Canada is outrageous, actually. It's outrageous. It's like stamping on a fluffy bunny, really, isn't it? I mean, you know, I think it's just terrible.
Donald Trump's jackboot diplomacy and America's lagging submarine production aren't the only potential stumbling blocks to the success of AUKUS and to Australia's strategic defence plans. This is Barrow-in-Furness in northwest England, home to Britain's only shipyards capable of building nuclear subs.
This is what Barrow was created for. So the whole town is built on the back of the iron and steel industry, and then shipbuilding as well. And then that's moved on now to submarines, but we actually did build the first submarine in the 1800s.
Here in Barrow, the brand new AUKUS nuclear submarine, to become Australia's ultimate maritime strike weapon, is to be designed and built by BAE Systems, whose giant shipyard looms over the town. Known as the SSN AUKUS, construction of the first of these massive nuclear-powered subs is supposed to begin in Barrow by the end of this decade. Another production line will be established to build more in Adelaide, with Australia due to get its first SSN AUKUS in the early 2040s.
So the SSN AUKUS program is on track. I'm not underestimating the complexity of this. This will be probably the most complex engineering feat in the world.
Like the American Virginia-class deal, Australia will pump billions into the UK's submarine industry to help the SSN AUKUS become a reality. It will need to, because like the US, the industry here is recovering from hard times. For the first decade of this century, the United Kingdom did not commission a single nuclear attack submarine, and the workforce here at Barrow dropped by more than 10,000 people. Now, even with the rejuvenation of the industry, there are fears here in the UK that the AUKUS submarine will still not be delivered on time or on budget.
The trouble is with huge complex programs like building nuclear submarines, you know, you can't, it's not like building a shirt for Marks and Spencer's. I mean, the length of time is huge.
Admiral Alan West, now Lord West of Spithead, is Britain's former First Sea Lord, the official who oversees the Royal Navy's operations, including the deployment of submarines. He warns that when it comes to tackling the AUKUS nuclear submarine program, the UK is short-staffed and underskilled.
They're not there yet. You know, we've got to have a really major training program in terms of shipyard ability, and also in terms of the nuclear ability. And we are having to rapidly train and get people up to speed, and we're not there yet.
I mean, the history of all our submarine building programs has been that they go over budget and over time quite significantly, and costs just escalate.
Lord Ricketts is a former UK National Security Advisor, and he also warns that Australia should not expect the SSN AUKUS to arrive on time.
I think any sensible defence calculation will be that these things will be more expensive and later than is currently expected. Australia has to expect that the timelines that are now drawn are bound to string out.
BAE Systems has told Four Corners that the SSN AUKUS is now in the detailed design phase, with work on the first submarine for the Royal Australian Navy to begin on schedule by the end of this decade. The company is now recruiting thousands of new workers to train them for the AUKUS program.
When you talk about AUKUS and shipbuilding in general, they eat, sleep, breathe it here. So the AUKUS program, if you've got kids in school now, as they leave school, there is a job here in this industry for them.
Critics of the SSN AUKUS program say it has crucial flaws that go beyond training up a skilled workforce. It begins with the proposed size and scale of this nuclear-powered colossus. At 10,000 tonnes, the SSN AUKUS will be about 3 times the size of the Collins-class, and 25% bigger than the first American Virginia-class submarine to be delivered.
So, yeah, it's a big boat, be far less manoeuvrable than Collins is.
It's too big to fit into the shallow water that something like a Collins can get into. And a lot of the areas to our north through the archipelago and up into the South China Sea, shallow water is an issue.
So you think it's just too big for what we need?
Yes.
Then there is the nuclear reactor designed to power the SSN AUKUS that's being developed by Rolls-Royce. For 3 years in a row, the UK's Infrastructure and Projects Authority has marked the program under which the new reactor falls as being unachievable.
I think Rolls-Royce have had some real problems, and I think they will get through it, but they've got to bloody well focus on this. They've got to absolutely ensure that they're delivering on time with what you really need.
Rolls-Royce have been building the engines for our boats for decades now. I think anything they do, like anything else, when you change something and you develop something, things change.
Australia is sinking nearly $5 billion into the troubled Rolls-Royce nuclear reactor complex in the UK so that it can be ready for the SSN AUKUS program.
That'll take a little bit of time to wash through, but we are very confident that that will see a state-of-the-art reactor delivered to Australia on time.
And there is another factor that could delay Australia's ambition for the SSN AUKUS, and that's the fact that the Barrow shipyard is building the UK's preeminent strike weapon, the massive nuclear-powered and nuclear-armed Dreadnought submarine.
They're concentrating, of course, first on the Dreadnought submarines, the ones that carry the nuclear ballistic missiles. The Dreadnought has to take priority because that is the nuclear deterrent is our ultimate defence.
The world has seen momentous events since the signing of the AUKUS agreement in 2021.
Well, a lot has changed. We've had our own continent invaded, as you know, by Russia, something that I don't think anybody properly predicted. The challenges have grown. The world has got more dangerous.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine has sparked the bloodiest conflict in Europe since World War II. For the United Kingdom, it sparked a tectonic shift in focus and priority.
Fundamentally, our first responsibility is in NATO, and that's where my focus is.
And while Britain, of course, has important relations with Australia, the centre of gravity of the country's security is in Europe. And so I think the whole context in which the AUKUS deal was struck has changed. And has changed durably. I don't think it's going to go back. I think we are now going to be spending and focusing on our security in Europe for the foreseeable future.
We will create a hybrid Royal Navy.
This month, while releasing a radical defence overhaul, the British Prime Minister recommitted his nation to a NATO-first policy. But he also pledged to deliver a fleet of SSN AUKUS submarines.
Under our AUKUS alliance with the US and Australia, we will now deliver up to 12 attack submarines protecting Britain's waters, scaling up the industrial base in Barrow and all along the supply chain to deliver a new sub every 18 months.
It's expected, or it's hoped, that the first SSN AUKUS will be in the water and operational in the early 2040s. Is that deliverable?
It is, but it's quite an ask, but it is deliverable.
A big ask.
I would hope Australia has got a plan B. I think it's always sensible to have a plan B, because you just never know quite what's going to happen.
By my count, this is Plan D that we're executing right now. It is the most capable submarine option that we have looked at in the history of the Royal Australian Navy. It is the right capability for our needs.
No big defence policy or acquisition program comes without risk. But Australia has bet the house and its Indo-Pacific defence strategy on these nuclear subs. And with both the British and the Americans struggling to maintain their own submarine fleets, and with the global order being turned upside down by Donald Trump and his America First sledgehammer, and now his review into AUKUS, the delivery of the nuclear submarine program is far from assured.
You think the transfer of Virginia-class submarines to Australia will be a reality?
I think these boats will be delivered on time and in full, but, you know, maybe you'll play the tape back to me in the mid-2030s and, you know, I won't be right. I can't say 100%.
Do you think Australia will definitely get these Virginia-class submarines from the United States?
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Absolutely yes. 110%.
On time?
On time's going to be... I'm not going to commit to on time. I have never seen a major defense program executed on time.
You think the Australian government should brace itself for the fact that SSN AUKUS may be a little late, years late?
I think people have to brace themselves for bad news every few years, that actually it's going to be longer, actually it's going to be more expensive. It would be very surprising if this program bucks that trend.
We're absolutely committed to building our own nuclear-powered submarine and having that delivered in the early 2040s. That is our plan, that is our commitment.
There are questions about whether this submarine technology will be relevant by the time Australia gets it. And even if it is, others warn that it's not Washington or London that presents the biggest risk to the $368 billion AUKUS submarine program.
I think the biggest threat is that there will be the Australian people and government will stay wedded to the fact they're willing to spend what is an unbelievable amount of money to become a nuclear submarine power.
A submarine program is a formidable industrial undertaking, and what it does require here, as well in Australia, is a real sense of national enterprise behind it. And that means leadership. It means it needs to be led by the two prime ministers and the two governments.
Submarining isn't easy, but we're bloody good at it. We've got a lot to be proud of. We've got a lot to be optimistic about.
Critics don't share that optimism, warning that Australia has not only signed up to a pipe dream costing hundreds of billions, but the AUKUS deal could very well leave the country's maritime front line exposed and even defenceless.
It's a bit of a dud, really. For the people of Australia who've paid billions of dollars, it's not very good.
Plan A is not going to work. Virginia's not going to arrive, and that SSN AUKUS is a risky proposition as well. I think it certainly is an illusion. It's an expensive illusion.